Welcome back to another amazing episode. This one's going to be full of energy. I already know because if you know Dr. Megan Daley, she is full of energy, and that is something that attracts me to her so much. I love your content online. I love the things that you talk about. This is a woman that talks about the hard shit that sometimes people just don't want to talk about. And that's what we talk about on this podcast. So she's an excellent guest for this. I'm so thankful that she signed up to be on the podcast. So Dr. Megan, thank you so much for being here with us today. And if people don't know who you are yet, give us a brief introduction to who you are outside of your work too, and then why you choose to do what you love.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am, first off, thank you so much for having me on here. I am so excited to chat today. And yeah, I freaking love talking about the hard things and just asking the hard questions and getting people to dig deep. So, hi everyone. I am Dr. Megan, and I'll give the who I am as a human first. I'm trying to actually really hard get out of the habit of immediately asking people, so what do you do when I first meet them? Versus like, so what do you do for fun? Which it's actually hilarious to watch how thrown off people get by getting asked something different. Anyways, so I am, if you know Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 7. I have lots of energy. I like doing all kinds of different things. I am obsessed with snowboarding first and I didn't even start until like age 32, I believe, but I am fully obsessed and travel, and I'm debating moving to somewhere cold just to snowboard. And if anyone who knows me knows, one, I'm always cold. Two, I hate being cold. Like, I'm from South Carolina and I've lived in Arizona. Like, those temperate that's my jam. But I'm like, nah, I need to be on a snowboard. I love hiking, backpacking. I'm super outdoorsy, and I am really big into personal development and growth. And really, like, my big why, which I'm sure we'll dive into at some point, my big why is really living life for you. And I found, not only for myself, but so many women in particular, around the age of 30 seems to be when you start looking in the mirror and you're like, wait, I don't fully recognize the person looking back at me. Like, how did I get here? Like, I checked all the boxes, or I'm working on checking all the boxes. Where's my good reward? Where's my happiness? Where's my fulfillment? And so that happened to me kind of at the same time as my dad became terminally ill. And so it set me off on this path of really finding myself, which led me to leaving my 10-year career as a doctor of physical therapy and really diving deep into what I do now, which is trauma and somatic mindset coaching for females, really like the go-getter female who's in a male-dominated industry and doesn't know how to put on the brakes without guilt and just keeps running herself into walls. And oftentimes that goes hand in hand with not only like repeated burnout, but being unaligned, because you built your life based on the expectations of others and shoulds, and it's not 100% you and the life you were meant to have. So what I do now is really help people find what that is, like what that's something more that you know you're meant for, that gut feeling, like really what is it? And then break down your limiting beliefs, your blocks, all the things that keep putting you into patterns of burnout no matter what you do, like getting rid of those. Like, so that's what I do in a nutshell, in addition to like just being me and being the high energy, like, let me do all the hobbies, multi-passionate person. I will say, one of the things that I work with clients on and myself, it was the hardest thing, was learning how to rest and recharge. And I'm glad to say in the last year, like, I can chill on the couch watching Netflix or like cuddling my corgi or reading a book without any guilt. Like, everyone leave me alone. I'm going to do my thing. I'll get back to you later. So yeah, that's that was a very hard skill for me to learn, but it's so worth it.
Well, I need to learn from you because that is the hardest thing in the world
Yep.
for me to do. And I want to touch on something that you just mentioned there too, is like working with females that are in male dominated industries. And
Mm-hmm.
you have that, it's like an insatiable need to hustle.
Yeah.
I feel like I definitely work in that. I own a septic company, which is highly male
Yep.
dominated. I worked with a bunch of guys. I know that when you did your sign up stuff for the podcast too, you were talking about how you always kind of thought yourself as like a guy's gal, and you had a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
guy friends and it was the thing. so much me, it's not even funny. Like, I grew up with all these guys. I've always worked in male industries. I worked in the beer industry and now I'm in construction. So it's like
Hmm.
just a bunch of dudes everywhere. How do you work with females that are in that arena to be able to? I think one of the hardest things, maybe I should preface it with this, is that when you're working in those industries, a lot of times you're very masculine in your energy, a lot of
Hmm.
times. And for me, I think a lot of the burnout that I face with things is that I live in that so much. Like, I don't know how to take that shit off when I go home. And so,
Yeah.
like, the ability to rest and relax and to do all of these things, I'm like, but I need to be doing this and I need to be doing this. And I can't ever come back to that soft feminine spot of things. So how do you, like, what's your advice? How do you work through things for women that find themselves in this? Because a lot of women that listen to this podcast are in the home service industry and they're dealing with the same stuff.
Yeah. So I love this question. And like most things, there's multiple layers to it, but I'm going to try to like simplify it as much as I possibly can. And it really comes down to when I work with a woman who is like, this is a very common theme, right? Like you hit it right on the head of like just staying in your masculine and not having an off switch. And a lot of that comes from societal conditioning, but there also could be other layers of family conditioning or beliefs or whatever that has led you to tie that masculine dominant energy into worth, and
Oh
like
yeah.
tying productivity into worth, tying accolades into worth and lovability. And so it really requires us to get down to the root of where is this story coming from for you? Because there are, like, I can make some generalizations. There are definitely some societal conditioning. And then when you get in male dominated industries, the career culture around that industry amplifies that tenfold. And anyone who's listening who has tried to even like integrate and bring in feminine energy, like it's almost like this jarring mirror to the guys that you work with, and they don't know how to handle it or what to do with it. They push back
Hmm.
hard, when in fact, if you can really like get to the root of where that block is, where that belief is that allows you to feel comfortable and lean into that femininity, if you can bring in that feminine energy and integrate it even into the workplace, I promise you, I've seen this time and time again, that is actually your superpower in those industries and in your field. And it just takes you standing strong enough in your power to kind of override any pushback that you're going to get. They'll see it eventually because they can't deny the results that you'll get and the massive positive transformations you'll make. But you do kind of need that like starting point of like blowing past whatever pushback you're going to get, and that does require getting deep, and it often comes from childhood, is and
Yeah.
as far as like where those blinders started getting put on or where it got so tied up into your identity that you don't know how to rest. The whole idea of like feeling so guilty and feeling like you can't take downtime and there's so many things on your to-do list, that is conditioning. That's not you, and we just have to
Hmm.
figure out where it came from and how to undo it. The other
Yes.
part, and let me know if this resonates with you, because this was very much me. And I put it in that intake form of I was the guy's guy. I legitimately didn't feel like other females understood me. I didn't feel like I
Hmm.
could connect with other females. I didn't feel like I was worthy of deep, like feminine friendship. And all of that was absolute bullshit. I had to get out of my way and I had to undo my belief that that was true in order to connect with women. I now, like, most of my friends are females, and a lot of them do come from like the same kind of background. Like they have that ability to jump into the masculine, but then they also like there's an ebb and a flow to it that a lot of them have found. So like if this resonates with you, like your people are out there, your tribe, your female tribe even is out there. You just have to get out of your own way, because our beliefs and our expectations drive our outcomes. So if you believe that you can't have female friends, yeah, you're not going to have female friends. Like, sorry, I don't know what to tell you.
Yes. So much. I resonate with that. Huge. One of the biggest things for me this past year is I went to one of Lindsay Schwartz's masterminds when she did her community builder
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And I walked into that room very much like, oh my God, I'm going to be sitting for 3.5 days in a room full of women that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And walking into that room was very intimidating to me. I can walk into a group of men and feel like, I got this. I was scared shitless to go into that
Yep.
room. And I was like, I don't know what I'm contributing here. Like, no one's going to understand what I do for a living. Like, these women are coaches and they're like speakers and they're in all of these different, industries from what I had. And really, when you sit down and you get to know people, and at this point, I'm in the room. So, like, fuck it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to like open myself up and we'll see what happens. But you're sitting in that room and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can relate with her even on like Jess Bergio. Like I
Mm-hmm.
met her
Oh, I love her.
in that room. Oh yeah. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I can relate with her," you know? Like there were so many things that even if you have kind of that masculine energy and you walk into things, like in my head, like the women's groups were just all the catty, gossipy things that I despise about like the
Mm-hmm.
Real Housewives of whatever, you know? And then, like, I go sit in this room and I'm like, I meet like Jess. And I was like, oh my gosh, or I meet Joanne. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these ladies are just like I am. So there are those women out there that you can definitely be open to having incredible friendships with. They're not all what we paint pictures in our head. And I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that is formed by the women that were in our lives or earlier friendships that we had that maybe went bad, but I have gotten so much support out of these women from just being in that room for 3 days than I've gotten out of friendships I've had for 25 years. And I haven't even
Oh
known
yeah.
these women a year yet. So, really, when you get in a room with women, and I know we hear that and we say it so much on this podcast, or if you're into development, personal development stuff, you hear all the time, get in the room. But you can get your ass in that room, but you've got to be open to being your authentic self, or you're
Yes.
still not going to
That's the
connect with
key.
these women.
I was gonna say, like, major props for you walking in and saying, like, well, fuck it, I'm here. Like, I might as well be open and just see what happens. Like, that is such a big, courageous step for a lot
Yeah.
of people. Like, that's a huge step right there. And it is imperative for you to really, really draw in and be able to connect with the right people. Like, there is something to be
Yeah.
said. It's kind of why I framed it of like, get out of my own way, because all of us, our conditioning, like we put up these walls and these masks, and so when people can't really see the real us, then yeah, no wonder that they don't connect,
Yep.
like the right people aren't connecting with us, and we're not being able to
Yeah.
really get past surface level stuff. And it truly is like, I'm not saying that the Real Housewives, like those women aren't out there, they are, but they're not your
Sure.
people, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it comes from the societal conditioning of like, oh, everyone has to like you and you have to be nice, and like this people pleasing tendency that we all tend to grow up with. Like, it doesn't serve us. It actually like completely halts our growth and our ability to connect with other people.
Absolutely. And you miss that depth that you can go with people if you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to please and be happy with everyone.
Yep.
That can go from friendships that you're making with other women in a setting like this, and even into running your business too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to please everybody, you ain't going anywhere because it's
Yeah.
impossible to do that for everyone. It's like an overhaul of what is going to be best for everyone, and it might not be everybody's favorite idea, but it's definitely going to help the team grow as a whole. So that is
Yep.
a huge thing too. Do you see that people, since we're on this topic, people pleasing tendencies tend to hit a burnout level even faster
Far
than
faster.
other people?
Far faster. And it really comes down to, so there are three main, like if I were to choose like the categories of what's going to put you into burnout, it's not doing nearly enough of the things that are like light you up, like the person who, like, you just, you have more capacity and you're playing it safe and staying comfortable. You're going to hit burnout because your soul knows that you're not doing what you meant to do. You also could be the person that's burning the candle at both ends, and people pleasers tend to also fall into that category because you're trying to do all the things for everyone, which is scattering you far too in far too many areas, that you are destroying yourself before you even get a chance to make forward momentum and where you're meant to. There's more like people that fall under that category. It really could just be like the person that's stuck in the hustle culture grind no one cares, work harder mentality, that like that category tends to feel guilty for rest no matter who they are. People pleasers do also fit in that one. And then the third category is going to be you're not working too hard. Like it's not the actual like hustle that's causing the burnout, it's the lack of alignment that's causing the burnout. So like that's
Mm.
the last time that I hit burnout really bad, that was actually me. I had learned all the nervous system regulation tools. I got to a point where I really could truly say that I love myself, and the energy that I had was way better, and all these things. I had the mindset, I had the emotional regulation, and I was trying to stay in a field, in a career path that was no longer aligned with who I was becoming. And it was so I ended up feeling like I was hitting a brick wall until I finally was willing to pivot from that path. So I'm going to circle back to the people pleasers because I want to talk about this a little more. And it really comes down to the typical people pleaser is saying yes to far too much. They're giving their energy away to far too many things. This does a couple different things. One, it turns into like no one can trust your yes now.
Yeah.
Like that's always been my issue with people pleasers is I can't trust your yes because you won't tell me how you're actually feeling. So I don't know if
Hmm.
it's really meant for you when I come forward to you with something and you're saying yes to me. And so the person that's listening and they're like, but I need to, like we're coming up on the holidays, right? But I need to get things prepped for the holidays, like the family's coming in and I need to take care of this, and oh, like this person's gonna be upset if I don't have it set this way. So what? Like, first of all, stop putting assumptions and projections on other people. Like, unless you've had a conversation with them,
Yeah.
people change. Like, and we all do this, right? Like, I'm guilty of it. Like, oh my God, my mom's gonna react this way about this person. Did it? No, she's not. Or I can't guarantee. And even if she does, like, that's out of my control. It's not my problem. It's not my responsibility to try to accommodate for it. What
Yep.
my responsibility is to be able to accommodate for myself, my feelings, my needs, and being able to have control over how I react. That's literally that's all your responsibility is. So as we're going into the holidays, like stop making your to-do list a mile long because of someone else's expectations or the feeling that you should take care of all the things. Absolutely not. That is going to hit you. Like that's why holiday burnout is a thing, is because like that's I think actually as I'm talking, I'm realizing holiday burnout is kind of the perfect example of why people pleasers get hit twice as hard and twice as fast with it.
Yeah, it's huge. And as women, we were talking about this before you hit record, like it's coming up to the end of the year. So if you are a high performing person, or some people refer to it as an overachiever, or you're just like, go hustle, that type of shit, you're like, I got to hit my numbers in my business. I got to put up
Mm-hmm.
7 Christmas trees and they all have to be color coordinated. I got to get like the mailman and whatever and everybody else a present, and everyone has to feel special. And at the end of the day, you look in the mirror and you're like, I gave up on myself.
Yep.
Because where in the hell are you squeezing in time anywhere there to take care of yourself? And it is so important that we make that, just like you were saying before, like others can't trust your yes. If you overload yourself for these next couple of months, we got Thanksgiving coming up and then Christmas coming up. And if you're a mom and you're doing all these things for everybody all the time, you can't trust your yes, because the first
Mm-hmm.
person that you're going to let go of on your schedule or your to-do list, guaranteed, if you're a people pleaser, is yourself.
Yep. 100%. There's a Glennon Doyle quote that I love, and it's something along the lines of if you have to choose between disappointing someone else and disappointing yourself, it is your duty in life to disappoint that someone else. It is your goal in life to never have to disappoint yourself. And I think that is just such a powerful example of that is like there's a reason they say put your own oxygen mask on first on the plane, right? Like if you don't have oxygen, like you might save another like but there's tons of people that you can't now because you didn't take care of yourself first. And there's what I want to help is because there are going to be people that are listening who's like, but I can't magically take those off my to-do list. Like I always actually get frustrated with the number one tip that you often hear is to delegate. And I also want to recognize that there are people who don't have the privilege of being able to just delegate. And
Mm-hmm.
so here's the tip that I like to give for myself and for others is think of two things when you look at that list. Actually three. One, is there anything that really doesn't actually need to happen right now? Like if someone who's worked with me knows that when we first start working together, I'm going to challenge you to have no more than 5 things on your to-do list per day. I want you to have 5 big needle movers that actually have to happen that day. Everything else goes on a nice to-do list. Because otherwise you're going to basically be breaking micro promises to you throughout the day. So that's step one, is really dialing in like what actually needs to get done. The second two questions, or the second and third, kind of go together, and it's looking at the list, looking at what needs to get done. How can I make this easier for me? And how can I make it more fun?
Oh,
Like, let's take the example of the, oh my gosh, I have to give gifts for everyone, because I recognize that there are going to be people, like, it does feel good to bring joy to people and to have
mhm.
things set up. Like, I've seen the Ring camera set up with the videos of like the Amazon delivery guys like getting pumped about snacks outside. If that like brings you a lot of joy, okay, then maybe that doesn't come off the list, but how can you make it easier and more fun? Is there something that you can buy in bulk that can go for them and the gift, like whatever it is that you have to do? Like, can you go just get one thing, make it really easy? Hell, if you have kids, like make it an interactive activity for them to put together little packages for you. Like, no
Yep.
one cares what it looks like, for starters. If you're a people pleaser, you get that tends to also go with perfectionism. I don't think the
Mhm.
reverse is always the true case, but people pleasers also tend to have some perfectionism tendencies. No one gives a damn what the package looks like. The thought matters more. So just focus on the feeling that you're giving and that you're getting in return, and stop worrying so much about it looking perfect. And this is coming from someone who used to like legitimately have a full breakdown if the pecan pie, like pecans got messed up. Like that is it is not healthy. And can you imagine what kind of energy I was giving out to the rest of my family and how much they were walking on eggshells if that was the reaction that they didn't like? They had no idea if that was going to happen. So if you're
Yeah.
resonating with that, if you freak out about like the little things that at the end of the day don't matter, not only is that not helpful for you, but like what are you doing to the people around you? That's not what you want to do. So take care of yourself first. Work on those emotional regulation skills. And I promise you, everything will feel not only 10 times better, but 10 times easier.
Yes. And even if you're not saying it, people can feel that shit coming off of you
100%.
so much. I remember it was like 2 Christmases ago, but like my mother-in-law was like, well, I don't like to ask Tanya how to do stuff because I know how busy she is all the time. And I was like, how dare you? Like, I can do stuff, like it was almost like one of those things where you're like, I know how to cook too.
Yeah.
But it was like, that's the vibe I was putting off to her. Not that I was necessarily saying this all the time, but I'm always like, hey, can you pick up my kids? Can I do this? I'm talking about work all the time. Of course, she doesn't want to add to my plate, even though I'm not
Hmm.
directly saying something to her. So people listen to what you're saying, they watch you, they can feel you. If you're tense, if you're freaking out, like, you don't want the turkey to get messed up because it's so pretty and it's, this
Yep.
Pinterest shit that you found. Like, no one cares. Is it good? Great.
Yep.
Like the sloppiest turkey, as long as it tastes good, no one gives a shit. So it's
Yep.
like those littlest things of like, I remember I used to wrap packages and you'd spend so much time like wrapping them
Hmm.
perfectly. And then nobody even looks at it anyway. So you
No,
just
it
rip
just
it
gets
all off,
ripped open.
you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's those little tiny things that we do as women that we're like, oh, this is how I'm showing or demonstrating my value here. That is
Yep.
completely not what anybody needs to have from you. You want to give them value, give them your presence and your time.
Yep. And I think what you just said is so powerful too. We tie it to our value. So you're making it mean something about your worth. So then when it doesn't go well, so like if anyone's listening and you're resonating with this, like sit on that. Go journal on it. Like, how am I making these things mean something about me personally and my worth? And where does that
Mhm.
story come from? I
Mhm.
Because on the flip side too, like if you're listening to this and like you're saying, well, this isn't me, but I definitely have a family member that I walk on eggshells around because of this, hold boundaries with them. Like, don't let that shit mess with you. Hold boundaries.
Yeah.
I'll use the example. I did an entire podcast episode on my podcast on this. It was a couple Christmases ago, and I happened to be home, and my mom is very particular about her tree. It's a fake one, partially because she's allergic to real ones, and partially because she likes 5,000 bajillion lights on the darn thing. And so a fake one with like pre strung lights that she can add to just makes it easier. And so she will always delegate someone else doing the tree, but she wants it done a very specific way. So I'm home, so I get delegated to do it. And as soon as I have like 3 ornaments on this sucker, and she comes up and she's like, so you're doing it wrong. The ornaments need to put in this way and in this order, and starts going off. And I just looked at her and I was like, Mom, I love you. I've known you for 30 plus years now. I know exactly how you want your tree to be done. And so I'm going to give you an option. You can stay and be around, but you're not allowed to say anything. Or you can leave. You're not allowed in this room until I am done. And then if you do not like the final product, I will personally undo it and redo the whole thing. Now, this isn't like the perfect example of a boundary, but this was me using my voice and holding a boundary with like, hey, you're not going to micromanage me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And she came back in when I was done and she was like, okay, fine, that looks good. And like walked off in kind of this like she didn't want to admit she was right. Again, if anyone knows Enneagram, my mom is an Enneagram 1, which if you do know Enneagram, that explains a lot. Having a 1 parent and a 7 kid. But that's just a great example of a boundary. And this could also look like one of my favorite ones to tell people who work an office job. When
Mm-hmm.
you're working at a desk, you're basically a sitting duck for people to interrupt you and have conversations. And people pleasers have a really hard time saying no. So they get stuck in these conversations and they're backed up on work and then they're taking work home and now they can't have time with their kids and it just spirals and snowballs on them. And so having something that can be on your desk that can be an outward visual sign of like, hey, I'm busy, I can't talk right now, is really handy. And here's why. Now, the first key to this is when you pick the object that's going to be on your desk, it could be a Rubik's Cube that's like solved with the red side out. It could be your kid's troll doll that they no longer play with. Like, I don't care what it is, but communicate to your coworkers that, like, hey, if you see this on my desk, I'm really busy and I need to get stuff done and I don't have the time to talk. The reason that this is so helpful is now, granted, people are going to forget, especially when it's earlier on and you're just implementing this. But if you communicate clearly, when someone does interrupt you, you don't even have to stop what you're doing. You literally just like point to the doll and they're going to be like, oh, never mind. We're good. I'll catch you later.
Yep.
Versus if you don't have any kind of outward sign, they're just going to start chatting with you and then you're going to feel really bad and it's going to be much harder for you to hold that boundary. Having some sort of like external visual thing can really help. I've also heard someone else, I cannot remember who at my time, but they blame things on their values and their purpose. They'll be like, "Oh, my values say I can't have this conversation right now." Which actually that's a great one if someone's bringing up something you don't want to talk about at the holiday table. Like, "Oh, my
Mm-hmm.
priorities don't allow me to do this right now." So that's almost like even though it's an internal object, it feels better if you're like trying to figure out how to stop being a people pleaser to put the onus on some sort of like thing about you or in you versus just you personally.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. That's something that I think a lot of people can use, especially around the holidays. That was a great example because many times we find, we go to the family's house and people are talking about shit you don't want to talk about, and then I don't want to be rude or, uh, you know, then I think a lot of times that women will find themselves like having conversations that maybe they don't necessarily want to talk about. And then they come
Yeah,
home and then they beat themselves up
I will
afterwards
straight
because
up walk
I didn't
away.
say
I don't
something.
care if it's my mother, my brother, I don't care who it is.
Yep.
I will get up and leave. And it feels really uncomfortable to do it the first couple times, but then people kind of catch on. One, it gives other people permission to hold boundaries. Like there's a lot more boundary holding in my friends, my family, everything once I started doing it. And then the other thing is like they now know and no one takes offense to it. Like if I get up and walk away from the table, guarantee I'm going to have someone being like, "So sorry, we'll shut this down. What would you like to talk about?" Or something of that nature. Like it's just normal and natural after that first uncomfortable point. Because I promise you, when you start holding boundaries, and a lot of the things that I work with clients on really comes down to like we talked earlier about breaking through and like figuring out your pattern and being able to get to the root cause. And then the second thing is like, okay, now that you know the change or the growth that you want, what boundaries do you need to have in place in order to actually allow you to accomplish this? Because if you don't have boundaries, yeah, your energy is going to be all over the place because your energy is going to get taken from you without boundaries.
Yeah.
your energy, your time, your focus, all of it. So when you're setting these boundaries, you are going to have people push back because there are going to be people in your life who served, who benefited from you not having boundaries.
Yep.
And it does come down to sometimes like you do have to let go of some people in your life that no matter how much you love, like if they really truly will not respect your boundaries, part of holding a boundary then is actually walking away from that human. Because if you don't, then they learn that you actually don't really care about that boundary and they will overstep it. And there's going to be plenty of people, the ones who are meant for you, who are meant to go along for the ride, will adjust to the new norm and they will respect your boundaries. And honestly, they will love you more for it. And I'll also say this, the ones who do have to leave, good. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt like hell. It doesn't mean it's easy. But that then frees up that whole like one door closed, a window opens. I know it sounds cliche as all hell, but it's so true. And that also goes for the people in your life. When you have to let go of the people that aren't respecting your boundaries, you will then have space to call in the people that are meant for you. And that's what I had to do to actually like find my tribe of females that I really could connect and be supported and empowered by.
Yes. And around the holiday time too, I think a lot of times people just put up with stupid amounts of shit and then they become very like
Resentful.
almost like
If
resentful
you
about
don't
the
hold
fact that they
boundaries, you
stayed
are
there.
asking for resentment.
Yeah. So they become resentful about things. And you have to be super clear about that. If you're going somewhere for Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they make you feel like shit the whole time you're there, like make you have to stand up and say something about that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the hardest things in the world, like I don't personally have a relationship with my parents anymore. And it was something that for years, like it was just turmoil and turmoil and turmoil and bullshit and bullshit. And it was like, they're not going to change now that I have this boundary of what it is. I have to make a decision. I can't even keep my foot in this door whatsoever
Yep.
because then I'm constantly getting pulled back into the bullshit that I've been trying to escape forever. And although that is a very difficult decision, it's the best thing in the world that I did for myself and also breaking that generational bullshit that my kids now know nothing about because I
Yeah.
made the decision to not involve them in those things. So even as a woman, if you're a mother, if you're bringing, you're around other little small kids of things like that, you have to make that decision because it's not just for you. It's what
Yep.
happens to you afterwards that now gets put on everybody else that's around you. So you really got to think
Mm-hmm.
about that. Many times those boundaries are for more than just you.
Yep. I'll say two things. One, there's a quote that I came up with that I say all the time, and it's unconditional love does not equal unconditional tolerance. Boundaries are not unconditional. And the second thing that I'll say is so I had to start holding really strong boundaries with my mom when I started diving into this personal development and kind of realizing how much negative energy and how much I was drained going home. And a lot of that actually centered around assumptions that we were each making about the other one and projections that we were making when we actually finally had a conversation and started holding boundaries, we now have a beautiful relationship. Like I'm not saying she's like now inner circle of my people, but we have a very like understanding of each other. And I now know like
Mhm.
I can say literally whatever to her and she'll roll with it at this point versus immediately projecting or assuming or pushing back. So the thing, because I feel like a lot of people feel like when they start to hold boundaries, like there's a fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to let people go. And like, yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You probably are. But the ones who are meant for you are going, like, those bonds are going to blossom and grow even stronger. And you might be surprised and very grateful for both of those who you have to let go and who you actually get closer to. But yeah, it's scary to have to let those people go. You're also not going to get the opportunity to grow closer with the people who are meant for you and call in the people who are meant for you without holding the boundaries and holding your ground and putting yourself first. Like that just those go hand in hand. You have to do it.
Absolutely. And remembering, like, there's so many people that will come into your life, like, that are going to love you that you don't even know yet.
Yep. And I'll
And
circle
being
back
able to allow
to
them.
yeah, if you the other thing that I have noticed is if you are not willing and able to hold the boundaries and let the people go that need to go, you're also setting yourself up for burnout because you're going to fall back into patterns and you're going to get pulled back into various things that suck your energy and your focus and your time. And so you're going to end up back in a pattern of burnout if you don't take care of that.
Yes. Oh, this is such a good conversation, especially during holidays time when I know as a woman that has definitely, and especially as a business owner too,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people that are want to take time off, and there's a lot of, you're trying to hit your goals and you're trying to do all this stuff. Like, you got to be very open with what your expectations are with people. And you,
Mm-hmm.
again, if you've got that people pleasing tendency, I have been in the situation myself this week. Like, everybody wants to take the same amount of time off, and I'm like, so I could just step in and then I can help and then everybody can do this. And I'm like, no, bullshit. That's the week I was going to take off too. And so
Mm-hmm.
now I need to make this work around not just pleasing everybody here, because I had already made that plan myself and communicated that. So don't change that for something else. So really being
Exactly.
able to set those boundaries in your business too, if you are a
Mm-hmm.
business owner, in understanding, like, and be clear with your communication like that with people. I think that's one of the biggest things with the boundaries is we seem to set boundaries in our heads, whether that's at work or in our personal life, but we don't communicate them.
Yeah, if
And
they're not
then we get
communicated, I honestly, all that does is doubles down on the resentment that you're and frustration that you are going to feel internally.
yes. Yes. And it's not fair to those people that you didn't communicate it to
No,
in the first place, to be real honest,
clear is
like,
kind.
you're super pissed at your husband for something that he's doing that you're like, "Oh, I don't do this anymore," or this irritates the shit out of me, but you don't communicate that, and then you get upset about it, and
Yep.
they just keep doing it, but you haven't talked about it too. So
Yeah.
it's very important that you communicate those boundaries too. And if you're listening to this podcast, you've got to be somebody that loves personal development, because this is what we talk about all the time on here. And as you are growing and up leveling and doing different things in your life, you have to communicate those things. Because, like you said
Mm-hmm.
before, there are people that were like, I don't like this new version of you. I like the party, Megan. I
Yep.
like the party, Tanya. I don't like that you don't like to go out and get drunk on the weekends now. And you're like, that's great. And I understand that.
They're
And
also going to say that
there's
it's
like
not
seasons.
you, quote unquote. I
Yes.
did an entire podcast episode on this because it kept coming up with clients of mine, and it's called "Holding New Boundaries with Old Friends."
Oh, that'll be a good one. We'll tag that one in the show notes, because
Yeah.
that's going to be a good one to just kind of top all of the conversation that we've had here, because those boundaries are so incredibly important. And whether it's old
Mm-hmm.
friends or old family members,
Yep.
even, you can
Yeah.
still apply it.
Because it is. It's tough to communicate them, and also the other thing I'll add to that is like just because you've said it once does not mean it landed. Like give them grace when they forget and slip up. Also give yourself grace when you forget and you slip up. Like that's okay. Have some nervous system regulation tools in your back pocket to just take a step back and just do what's best for you and keep communicating. Like we talked about it a little bit before we hit record on it's very easy to beat ourselves up when we fall back into old patterns or we head towards burnout again or we're not holding a boundary. Remember to give yourself grace. Like you are a human being, you are not a robot.
Hmm.
And to just remind yourself of like, okay, all right, this is a fresh start. What can I learn from this? And then let's move forward and let it go. Take the lesson, leave the
Yeah.
rest.
Yes. Oh, that's just good advice all the way around. Take the lesson, leave the rest. That's awesome. Megan, thank you so much for this
Yeah,
conversation. I
thank
know
you.
this is going to sit so well with so many people. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, I hope you listen through this whole thing, because sometimes it can be. Sometimes you can be listening to conversations like this. I know when I wasn't ready to draw those boundaries, a conversation like this would have been tough. And I'm like, then I start beating myself up because I think I should have set a boundary, but I haven't. And now I'm resentful and
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah, blah. Give yourself some damn grace, just like you just said. Like,
Yeah.
you've got to get used to being able to do that. You can't just drop the hatchet and expect everyone to participate, first of all, or for you to be perfect about that. one little thing at a time, one little thing at a time that's making your life better. Please do that, because this conversation is never meant to beat anybody up about what you are doing, what you're not doing, but to bring light to the fact that there are a lot of us that probably need to be setting better standards and boundaries. And if we're not communicating them properly to people and we feel like shit because we feel like
Yeah.
they're not listening to us, we got to keep communicating it. So,
Yeah. And that actually
Dr.
reminds
Megan is,
me, I'll shoot you a
yeah,
freebie link.
hey,
And it's a PDF, and it's basically a guide on how to start an uncomfortable conversation and how to hold a
ooh,
boundary.
that will be excellent too. So we'll link that too in the show notes so that you guys
Ooh.
can download that and go through that. I'm going to download that and go through that. And it's different for everybody. You know, you can have I can have uncomfortable conversations with my husband all the time, and then I have to do it with somebody at work, and I like have a panic attack. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's really like finding your groove in there. It's different for everybody. So
Yep.
tell us where everybody can find you if they want to follow along. You have to follow her Instagram. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
And then let's talk about your 180 program that you do too.
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram, and it's Move on the Daily. Daily is spelled Daley, which is my last name. So it's always me in the DMs. Please hit me up. Would love to chat and connect. And then, yeah, my 180s are like almost sold out for the year. But if you jump in now, so I believe this episode is going to come out like mid December. So if you jump in now before the new year, you can get in before the price increase. And you still, like, I will honor that into the new year as long as you've gone ahead and purchased. And they are launchpad sessions. It is the 180 that you're looking for in life in 180 minutes flat. So as soon as you purchase, you get an intake form. I utilize that intake form to send you pre work. And that really is like, that is me diving into all those things that we talked about earlier, like those blocks where you're kind of getting into your own way, your blind spots. I send you pre work that'll like exposes that and is able to get you to start really working through it. A lot of people have had giant aha moments even in that. And then we have a deep dive call. So the pre work takes about 90 minutes, and then 90 minutes of a deep dive call one on one with me. And we go through everything. We'd go through all of your blocks, figure out your path, help you gain clarity on where you want to go next. And I will actually have you taking action on the call. This is where like my masculine plus my feminine comes into play. And it'll be like a really flowy, like the very feminine vibes. And then like we do take action, like legitimately on the call, and help you find a path forward in the trajectory that is meant for you. So circling back to the whole don't live your life for expectations or shoulds, like live the life that's meant for you. And so if you feel like there's got to be something more, or you feel stuck, like this is the thing that will launch you into the life that you actually want to live.
Awesome. Everybody could take advantage of that and learn something from that, because that is sometimes you just need to sit down with your thoughts and
Yeah.
be able to figure out that shit. Sometimes you
Yep.
think, this isn't a problem for me. And then when you really sit down and start going to work on stuff, it's amazing what you can reveal
Yep.
when you really are focused on those things. So that's an
Yeah.
incredible opportunity that I hope everybody takes advantage of for sure. And then definitely Move on the Daily is the podcast, which is incredible.
Human on the
So
daily.
we'll link that also in here. So we will definitely hook that up too. Thank you so much for your time today. This was such a great conversation that I know so many people will be able to get so much out of, even if they're just starting or they need to strengthen those boundaries. That is a big thing that we really have to focus on, and be kind to yourself in that
Yes.
process. But last thing that I love to ask
Yeah.
everybody at the end of this podcast, because I am writing a book and
Ooh.
I want to focus on all of these incredible women that are doing incredible things, that just because you're not on a stage or a screen somewhere doesn't mean that you're not kicking ass and doing really cool things. And what the book is based around is how women embrace the phrase and what it means to them in their life. Um, the phrase of ladies kicking ass. So, Megan, what does
Yeah.
the phrase ladies kicking ass mean to you?
Oh, I love this question so much. And what immediately comes to mind is ladies kicking ass to me is a lady who is unapologetically herself and living life for herself. Like she is going after what she wants without really any care for someone else's expectation or projection on her. Like if a woman
Mm.
that's fully embodied, like that is a powerful as fuck woman, and you can feel that energy. That's someone who's going to change the world and light up everyone around her.
Yes. Oh, and there's so many women watching you being able to do that. And I think that's something that comes through with everything that you're doing too, is
Oh,
that power that is within you to be able to do those things. And it really is a light for other people. So thank you so much
thank
for being
you.
here. And thank you for that. It always makes me so emotional because it's so different
Like
to
I'm going to get
everybody. And
emotional. That was thank you.
it's so beautiful to see the difference to people. Sometimes it's like, I just learned how to, take a goddamn rest once in a while.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's like I'm pushing forward. Sometimes I'm leaning just into motherhood. Sometimes I'm leaning into work. And it's so cool to see how women are so incredibly diverse and yet we are so connected at so many different
Yes.
levels. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And again, everybody be sure to follow Dr. Megan on Instagram. Check out her 180 programs and just definitely stay connected with her. She is a light that you need in your life.
Oh, thank you so much, Tony. That was beautiful. Thank you.